coverage of the political persecution of Donald Trump, exposing the deep state, bad actors, and bringing you the information the rest of the media wants you to ignore. And just ahead, former Defense Department Chief of Staff and government Gangsters author Kash Patel will be here to break it all down. And later, iconic political strategist Roger Stone will give us all the details on why Donald Trump is crushing his primary opponents, along with the never-ending struggles for Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. And we begin today with even more evidence that the fix is in against Donald Trump in the Washington, D.C. January 6th case. And we turn our attention to the presiding judge, Tanya Chutkan. Now, back in November 2021, when Donald Trump sought to use executive privilege to protect against abuses in Democrats' sham January 6th committee, you see this right here, it was the same judge who denied the request and in the process revealed her deep anti-Trump agenda from the bench. In her ruling denying Donald Trump executive privilege, she wrote, quote, "This unprecedented attempt to prevent the lawful transfer of power from one administration to the next caused property damage, injuries, and death. And for the first time since the election of 1860, the transfer of executive power was distinctly not peaceful." Well, this alone should be disqualifying. How can she objectively oversee this case? She's already made up her mind. And there's absolutely no way Donald Trump can get a fair trial. And meanwhile, Donald Trump's attorneys have until 5 p.m. today to respond to a protective order from Jack Smith. The order would limit what discovery evidence the Trump team could share publicly about information related to the case and the 2020 election. And Trump attorney John Lauro also revealed this weekend that former Vice President Mike Pence may end up being their strongest witness. Take a look.
Mike Pence will be one of our best witnesses at trial. I read his book very carefully. And if he testifies consistent with his book, then President Trump will be acquitted for these reasons. Number one, Mr. Pence recognizes that John Eastman, who was giving legal advice, was a renowned legal scholar. Number two, Vice President Pence recognized that there were discrepancies and fraud in connection with the election. He wanted it to be debated on Capitol Hill. Mr. Trump wanted it to be debated in the state legislatures. But make no mistake about it, based on what Vice President Pence will say, the government will never be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that President Trump had corrupt or criminal intent. And that's what this case is about.
Mike Pence is saying.
It's pretty compelling. And of course, while the D.C. swamp does anything in their power to stop Donald Trump in 2024, Joe Biden continues to duck any and all accountability. And a new ad put out by MAGA Inc., exposes how the timeline in the sham indictments lines up perfectly with the Biden protection racket. Take a look at this.
Joe, how come your Justice Department goes after Trump endlessly, yet they cover for your family? Hunter's laptop? Yeah, that was censored, but we know that laptop's real. And it's not just filled with photos of Hunter's drug-fueled debauchery either. Nah, it showed Hunter pocketed millions from foreign partners, cash from Ukrainian and Chinese interests accused of bribery and fraud. And remember when you claimed your family never made money from China? Well, Hunter admitted in court he took their cash. His Chinese business partner was tied to the Communist Party. How did Hunter's partners get meetings at the White House? Your brother, grandkids, even nieces and nephews got paid from foreign deals. Your family and their cronies raked in over $17 million from these schemes. And you, Joe, went from being one of the poorest in Congress to a millionaire in the White House. Come on, Joe. All this a coincidence or corruption? Make America Great Again, Inc. is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Oh, courtesy of MAGA Inc. Here to explain more, one of our favorite guests, and one of yours, you know it, Russiagate hero, former Defense Department Chief of Staff, and author of the fabulous book, Government Gangsters. Here he is, Kash Patel. Thanks for being on the show, Kash.
Hey, KG, thanks so much for having me back on.
So you see right through this stuff, like in 5 seconds. You also are like Psychic Friends Network because you can like predict the future. You know what the bad actors, the government gangsters are going to do before they do it because you know how to like tell what's going on and figure this out. So the timeline here really tells the whole story, doesn't it? Because when something bad breaks for Biden, then Trump gets hit with another sham indictment. It's not like a coincidence anymore at this point. And right? And now the DOJ doesn't even want Team Trump to be able to talk about the case. Lay out what you're seeing unfold here.
So look, to lay it out, and there's some great reporting on Truth on this, but basically every time something happens to Hunter or Joe Biden, Trump is indicted the next day. We find out that the FBI knew about the Biden bribery scandal. Trump's indicted the next day. Devin Archer testifies before Congress playing the phone calls that Joe Biden and Dad were in on it. Trump's indicted the next day. I mean, this is a repeated pattern of conduct. I'm just labeling two. And so, of course, all they want to do is bury the real investigation of crime with the Biden crime family syndicate and falsely accuse Donald Trump of made up fictions. And in the process, I think it's backfiring. Americans, and they may not admit it to you and I, KG, but most Americans are out there saying, wait a second, maybe 6 years ago, and you guys told me all the lies about Donald Trump. Okay, I thought he was a criminal Russian asset spy, but you guys were the ones lying to me. He was never that. And I think that's what's coming full circle here. And to use in your opening about Judge Chutkan, I don't know if you know this, but I hope Donald Trump's lawyers are watching. In 2017, when I was running the Russiagate investigation for Chairman Nunes, and we were about to break the story that Fusion GPS, Hillary Clinton, and the DNC had paid for the dossier, Fusion GPS and the Democrats took us to federal court. Do you know where that case landed? Before Judge Chutkan. We litigated that heavily before Judge Chutkan for a month, all parties. And when we were on the verge of winning, she recused herself on her own. So we were like, wait a second, why did you do that? And comes out she was an attorney at Boies Schiller, the law firm representing Fusion GPS, a party before her. This judge waited a month to recuse herself because she wanted to stop the information from ever coming out that this was a political operation run through the FBI. That and that alone is sufficient for her to recuse on the Trump indictment now. And she must do that. This is her own conduct, KG. We didn't make her do it.
You're right.
The media didn't make her do it. She did it on her own. That's mission number one to me in the Trump book right now.
In and of itself, that is disqualifying. How can she justify, the inconsistency that she's able to preside over this case now when she's admitted her own bias and recused on her own without request and said, no, I can't be on this case. I mean, it's just a fact. Those aren't it's not supposition. It's not like a first look at it. It's the fact that she did it before based on similar circumstances, et cetera, and findings and her past employer. So she's got to go. I mean, that's just a fact. So that should be the first thing, like you said, that they are doing to include, which I am quite sure they are, in their motion to recuse, right? They watch this show for the legalese and for what needs to be done. It's the strategy. It's the strategies laid out here, right? Oh my God. You can't make this stuff up, but these people are so corrupt, which is why you call them all government gangsters, and we got the judges as part of the government gangsters group as well. So, what's just, it's disturbing to me because these people, and like this judge, not even trying to hide it. It's all in our face, and this is a problem, Kash, because this ties in completely to the deep state, okay? And you talk about all this in your book, Government Gangsters, and the problem is the American people want these criminals held accountable.
Yeah,
how do we do it?
You're starting to see a sort of sea change here. A few years ago, these people who would say, oh my God, Donald Trump's super corrupt, he's a criminal, and the left and Nancy Pelosi are right about January 6th and everything else. Now, after indictment after indictment after indictment after indictment, during a political season, they are targeting a political opponent that whether or not they agree or disagree with Donald Trump, they do agree with the fact that the judicial system and law enforcement have been weaponized and targeted specifically against one party. Look, you and I are both former federal prosecutors. We're just a year over from the next presidential election, and DOJ's standing policy for the last century has been, we don't do anything during a presidential election cycle, certainly not with the target of a presidency.
Sure.
And if that weren't enough, Joe Biden, based on the precedent that DOJ has used to charge Donald Trump in the Mar-a-Lago case, let's just put it aside that it's illegal, but let's just use it. Joe Biden is guilty of way worse crimes under the Espionage Act to possessing thousands of pages of classified documents. And the special counsel there hasn't said one word. Do you think that guy's going to a grand jury anywhere? And here's the thing, KG, if they don't indict him, I already think it's game over, but if they don't indict him, Donald Trump is the next president automatically. Everybody in America now knows that President Biden should be charged with a felony, multiple felonies for those possession of documents.
It's so outrageous and so dirty. The fact that they're trying to push this forward, and where are the charges? Where are the charges, for Joe Biden? And something else that we've talked about and that you have been pretty vocal about is, because it's beyond the White House, it's the FBI, it's the DOJ. Mm-hmm. You've talked about how impeaching Wray or Garland should come before Biden even. So this is really interesting to me. And I like the progression and the thought process here. You're saying that should precede any impeachment of Biden. Lay this out, because I think this is a very compelling strategy.
Yeah, it's a little counterintuitive. Politically, I understand why people want to go after Biden, but here's the thing.
Right.
Everybody knows Biden's corrupt now. Even after the Devin Archer testimony, after the FBI documents, after the cover-up by DOJ, Merrick Garland, and Chris Wray. Remember, the only reason we only have one 1023, one FBI document, not the 10,000, is because we took them to contempt of court to just get one document. What else are they hiding? Of course, there are reams of documents, but Joe Biden's not going to give them to us. Christopher Wray and Merrick Garland are the owners and custodians of those documents. Those two individuals, putting aside the two-tier system of justice and baseless prosecutions of Donald Trump, they've already lied under oath to Congress multiple times, which is sufficient for an impeachment inquiry against both. And I think you should do it simultaneously, because once you subpoena them, you force them to produce all the documents about Hunter, about Joe, about the censorship with the FBI, which is again breaking news today, that they were in bed with big tech to censor free speech against Donald Trump to rig a presidential election. All of those receipts, as we call them, will come from an impeachment of Wray and Garland. With Biden, and all roads will lead back to Biden. We know that. So the public will get what they want in terms of the truth with Biden. But what we need for election purposes, KG, is to show the world what we know is true, that the FBI and DOJ are weaponized against Donald Trump, and there's a two-tier system of justice. And when we can show you the FBI forms, here's the one thing I learned about these government gangsters. They're so arrogant, they write it down because they're like, we're never going to get caught. And if we get caught, nothing's ever going to happen to us. So you got to impeach Wray and Garland. They did it in Russiagate, and we exposed their documents. It took us a couple of years. Now this Republican majority has to act and impeach Wray and Garland.
I think you're 1,000% correct. And just think about it. Figure it out. You've got to get the paper, like you said, and you've said this on the show many times, and it's people need to let it sink in. These people are so arrogant that they are papering it. So get the documents. How do you get the documents? Impeach Wray and Garland. And then all of it, that whole trail, paper trail, will lead back to Biden, the White House, the whole deal. Okay? So they just got to do it ASAP. That's it.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
Do not wait any longer. We were all waiting around forever for the Durham report, okay? I mean, my God. I mean, how many birthdays did I have between the beginning of that? And I mean, it's getting frustrating, you know what I'm saying? I kept waiting. I'm like, Durham, he's got it. And yeah, we got a lot of information out of there, but by this time we kind of knew that. But this is new information that we could be able to get, and it's legal and it's appropriate and it provides the transparency, and then we'll be able to get the answers. And also, justice delayed will not be then justice denied, because we'll be able to do something about it in a meaningful way. And TikTok right now, because it's 2023, so no time like the present, right?
No, that's the thing. I'm sick and tired of some of the folks in Congress and the Republican majority saying, oh, we sent him a letter. We called their attorney. Did the Democrats do that during the Jan 6 committee? I know they didn't. I was the first guy subpoenaed by the Jan 6 committee, and I found out because they issued a subpoena and leaked it to the Washington Post.
That's what they did. They leaked to the Washington Post for me too. While I was sitting there in the thing with them, when I disconnected the Zoom because they all showed up like freaks, and it was supposed to be one-on-one with just the investigators. And next thing you know, Washington Post is calling and texting. I was like, oh my God, Adam Schiff leaked it. Literally went from being on the screen with me and leaked it like 30 seconds later. The most dishonest people, him and Raskin, the whole crew.
We don't have to leak. We just have to use congressional subpoena power.
Right.
I keep reading about, we sent a letter and the FBI and Garland and Wray said that, they're ignoring us. Subpoena them. Subpoena the witnesses. Subpoena the FBI agent that just got caught lying to Congress about Hunter Biden's laptop and his communications with Facebook. His name is Alvin Chang. And I read that, the committee's efforts to obtain investigative materials from Alvin Chang have been blocked. Subpoena him. Put him in the seat. And when they don't listen, you take their money. I mean, geez, Republicans, we are in charge of the purse. For heaven's sake, use it. I'm not saying defund cops and police. I'm saying defund Chris Wray's fancy government-funded G5 jet. I'm saying take Merrick Garland's toys and defund them. Take Jack Smith's prosecution and sideline the salaries until these people show up. I'm not even saying shut it down. I'm just saying make these guys do what you did to us.
Right.
Which is show up with lawyers, spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. The only difference is we had nothing to hide. They hated our testimony because it exposed their corruption. Now we know they're corrupt and breaking the law, and some folks in Congress don't want to do anything about it. It's just really disgusting.
Wildly just evil and despicable. I did 13 hours. It's like, whatever, but all over again. And, it's just the questions and everything. And obviously they were just also trying to get all of our phones, all of our records, all of our emails, everything. They kept asking questions about the campaign because they wanted to get all the intel on how that worked and how fundraising worked. And it was just so obvious that it was like an information grab, and another excuse. And to have us all have to hire lawyers and spend money and time and resources to try to distract. Well, it didn't work. But I'll tell you something else that I like that I think is pretty interesting. What's your assessment here? And I talked about it when I was hosting Newsmax earlier today about the reported, testimony and the Tucker interview with Devin Archer. How do you feel that plays in, with Joe Biden? And, what kind of like little information nuggets are standing out to you on this?
Well, the amazing thing is, why hasn't Devin Archer been in a grand jury proceeding yet? Like, this guy is witness number one. And just for people who aren't familiar with it, everywhere Hunter Biden was, Devin Archer was his twin. Right. He was on the board of Burisma. They were on the board of Burisma together.
Frickin' frack,
yeah. Calls to China, Devin was on the phone calls to China. The phone calls to the Ukraine. So, KG, to put in perspective for the non-prosecutors out there, we have the videotape to the bank robbery and the guy's not wearing a ski mask.
Right.
And the DOJ doesn't want to press play. Now, there's a reason for that. They don't want that. They don't want what Tucker elicited and what Congress elicited from Devin Archer's testimony.
No, they don't.
And namely for me, and this one you can hit home on. Remember the Russiagate, the Trump Tower meeting, the epicenter of evil, and Don Jr. and company were there rigging elections and getting in bed with Russians.
I'm engaged to Dr. Evil, apparently. Yeah.
Yeah. I interrogated everyone in that meeting under oath, and the only thing they talked about was adopting Russian kids in America.
Oh, I know.
How about the Cafe Milano meeting? Devin Archer, Hunter Biden, Vice President Joe Biden, and do you know who the fourth character was there in 2015? The mayor of Moscow's wife, who had just sent Burisma $2 million the week before, is sitting in Washington, D.C. having dinner with the Vice President of the United States, and you're telling me they don't want to know about the Cafe Milano meeting? Which they had another one on 2 weeks later.
Crazy.
Everyone in that meeting needs to be interrogated, including Biden, by this Congress.
But come on, they got to do it. What is the deal here?
Yeah. And we have Tucker doing the interviews of Devin Archer. But, while that's great for media, it's not great for law enforcement and congressional accountability purposes because it's done in the media. So, it's good that he came in once. And look, he showed us that Vice President Joe Biden flexed all the time to get his son the ill-gotten gains from the Ukraine and China and God knows where else. We know it happened.
Terrible.
The media can't even run away from it. The guy is there pressing play. And the Republicans literally don't want to capture the video and show it to the world.
Yeah, well, it's just, I mean, that's it's outrageous because you have to do it, and it's so easy. Like, you spelled it all out. They just have to do it. Not to say they're not doing a lot of great things, but this is something of high priority importance to get done. And especially, you got to take advantage of this stuff while you have the majority of the ability to be able to. Even if it's a slim majority, you got to make sure and then work twice as hard the next time to make it a larger majority. But I want to talk to you, like, just circle, full circle with me on this. How does this all affect 2024? What's your reaction also to Ron DeSantis discussing the serious concerns, about the integrity of our election? Is this whole thing just another example of how disconnected he is from the MAGA base? I mean, you saw this stuff.
Yeah, look, I'm only going to spend about 3 seconds on Ron DeSantis. He's a total zero. He's out. See you later. You're not going anywhere near the presidency. Now, let's get to the guy that was the president, is going to be the next president. That's Donald J. Trump. And he probably put it better than anyone else can, I think. And I'm going to paraphrase here. He says, basically, he's one indictment away from the Oval Office.
Right.
And the reason he says that is not because he's an actual criminal. Because every time they indict him, more and more people in the middle road of America, in that middle section of politics, are looking at this saying, wait a second. You guys lied to us about Russiagate, you, the media and the left. You lied to us about January 6th. You lied to us about Donald Trump's successes in national security, defense, and law enforcement. And now when you say this corrupt actor was treasonous, seditious, and wanted to commit crimes against basically humanity, you charged him with a 1900 statute, crimes against rights. What are you talking about? They are seeing the baseless prosecution of the one man who can destroy their total and complete rule of the swamp. That's what they're afraid of. The American public, are seeing that, and the people in the swamp, I bet they're going to keep coming after him. This lady in Georgia and wherever else.
That's like TikTok any second.
Yeah. And so I just think, whether it's state or federal, across this country, New York or Georgia, DC or Miami or wherever else the next thing's going to drop, to bring it full circle, President Trump is the only one who has the ability to show Americans and the world that this is a targeted, baseless prosecution of a political man running for the presidency of the United States. And here's the good thing. He is able to take it in a fashion that no other man can. And he's out there talking about his policies, about the border, about going after human traffickers and drug traffickers and ending the forever wars. And today, what do we have? The implosion that was Joe Biden's Afghan withdrawal, and the brave families, the Gold Star families, are testifying out in California to members of Congress about how their children were murdered by a suicide bomber because Joe Biden gave a Bagram Air Force Base, the one thing that we in the Trump administration told him never to do. This is why America is needing Donald Trump, and this is why Americans are tuning in.
I know, and where we live, they have the 13 flags and everything, that died there. That was so preventable, and that's one of the things personally that I've seen, President Trump really be like emotional and upset about. It really, Kash, it really bothers him because he worked so hard and he respects so much the men and women that serve, and to keep them safe. And that was I was treasonous, I believe, to just give it up like that. I mean, how outrageous. It's not even like, oh, that was a mistake or a bad call. It's so obvious that you don't do that. And you gave away something that we worked really hard for and that was really pivotal in that geopolitical region that really impacted national security in a significant way, and a loss of life that was unacceptable. So it's just, my heart goes out to those families, that because of this man and the disgrace that he is, President Biden, that this occurred. So this is why I think it's so important when this stuff has to be documented. And that's why I think it's so good that you wrote, Government Gangsters. Tell us all, people are excited, the exact drop date. And I see you got your playing cards there. Take it away, Kash. Tell me what you got.
So Government Gangsters is finally releasing September 19th. Pre-order now at governmentgangsters.com. Everything we're talking about, the behind-the-scenes stories, the Afghan withdrawal, the killing of Baghdadi, bringing home American hostages, but more importantly, how the FBI and DOJ have been weaponized and how we fix it. That's what's in there. And there's a list at the end of all the government gangsters I encountered. I probably named more Republicans, Democrats, KG, if I'm being honest.
Good.
Who have corrupted the swamp. guys like Barr and Esper and Haspel and Rosenstein and Comey and all these criminals in my mind. But we have to fix the personnel, but we also have to use Congress, like we've been talking about, in a way that affects oversight that is meaningful to the American public, and take our money and our taxpayer funded dollars and use them for things we care about, the border, and going after Chinese fentanyl, and putting the death penalty on the table for human traffickers and things like that. So government gangsters, finally, after a 9-month battle with this government, there's got to be a reason they didn't want you to read it. We didn't bend the knee. There's almost no redactions in there. The ones that are laughable, and maybe I'll reveal them to you on KG
Exactly.
show. And yes, I am holding my cards. So we have to retire this government gangster, and we have to make this guy the next president of the United States.
God, I love that. Hold them up side by side, because this is what it really comes down to, folks. I could put up a little baby, and we say, baby, which one? And they'll go right there to Trump, not that joker fool.
And this is your government gangster card deck. You can get them at thecashfoundation.com.
Okay, cashfoundation.com for charity. That's for the cards, and then governmentgangsters.com for the book that drops on September 19th, right? So people can pre-order it.
Yeah, pre-order now. Yeah.
All right, I'm your Vanna White, baby. I hope you sell it all day long. I like to.
You're the best.
I'd like to
You're
buy
better
a
than Vanna White.
It's amazing. Thank you for being on the program, Kash. You're the best.
Thanks so much, Kate.
Take care, honey. All right, so make sure you like and subscribe so you never miss these major episodes like that, and because who we have coming up, one of my all-time favorites, and yours, political icon, Roger Stone, and he's a political genius as well, with major insights on the state of the 2024 race that is moments ahead. You don't want to miss it. But first, I want to thank an amazing sponsor for the help making this show possible. So be sure to check out the great folks over at Goldco. Gold and silver can protect your retirement savings from inflation and dollar devaluation. I mean, look, we all see the economic warning signs. Thank you, Biden. We see banks collapsing. We see reckless spending. And I want you to be ready, because I'm not kidding you, I'm ready. And with Goldco, you can take action to secure and stabilize your portfolio. Get involved, okay? You can make it happen. Don't stand by and let this economy and this administration wreck your family's future in life. Roll over your 401k or your IRA into precious metals and safeguard your savings. You can do this tax and penalty free. From precious metals, IRAs, to direct purchases of gold and silver, Goldco has helped thousands of Americans place over $2 billion in gold and silver. That's a lot of people believing and doing this, and with this company. And when you open up a qualifying gold IRA today, get up to $10,000 in free silver. They are giving it to you. So go to kimsmetals.com to learn more. That's kimsmetals.com. Take a few moments, click on it, go to that website. For presidential race, with Donald Trump continuing to crush his 2024 opponents by as much as 40 points, all while the DeSantis team's push for a campaign reset, appears to be getting worse by the minute. As a new report from Bloomberg says that aides are frustrated by the campaign's inner workings and say there's a lack of a single coherent campaign message. Here to react to that and much more, iconic political strategist. He is the host of the Stone Zone, a fantastic show, the one and only Roger Stone. Roger, thank you for being with me today.
Kimberly, great to be with you. These are dark times for America, and yours is a voice of clarity in this difficult time.
Thank you so much, sir. And so, more and more leaking reports of disarray inside Team DeSantis. Where is this campaign going wrong, and where is it headed from here?
Well, first of all, the entire campaign was based on a false premise that when Donald Trump was indicted by a vindictive and politically motivated Justice Department, that his supporters would flee him, and that Ron DeSantis would somehow rise as Trump without the baggage. Well, unfortunately for him, he's Trump without the personality, Trump without the charisma, Trump without the backbone, Trump without the record. This has just been extraordinarily ill-conceived from the beginning. I think it's important people know a little history because not everybody lives in Florida. Ron DeSantis was an undistinguished congressman running at 7% in the polls against the sitting state agriculture commissioner, who was a former congressman, who was at about 53. It is only the tweeted endorsement by Donald Trump that allowed Ron DeSantis to catapult ahead of his opponent, Adam Putnam, the agriculture commissioner, to even be nominated. Every single county chairman in the state supported Putnam. Every single elected Republican state legislator supported Putnam. Every member of Congress, with the exception of Matt Gaetz in the Republican delegation from Florida, supported Adam Putnam. Donald Trump single-handedly, unilaterally lifted Ron DeSantis and made him the Republican nominee. But that's not all. Since Ron was not very conversant with state issues, since he had been in the House and was actually planning a U.S. Senate race, he wasn't a very strong campaigner. So Donald Trump graciously changed his schedule to come to Florida two times, to do three events two times in the final 2 weeks of the 2018 campaign. So Donald Trump literally dragged Ron DeSantis across the finish line. Everybody's seen that cringeworthy TV commercial in which Ron teaches his child to say, build the wall, and you're fired. So the people didn't really elect Ron DeSantis. They elected him as a disciple of Donald Trump. And therefore, I think his candidacy is an act of treachery. It is stabbing a man in the back who made his career. And now he has the audacity to say in an interview he would have won bigger in 2018 without Donald Trump's support.
What a lie.
It's
so dishonest.
It's and insulting.
I mean, give me a break. And you've nailed it. You hit her on the head there. And Don Jr. and I had to get, dispatched out all over the state of Florida to help him, because he's not charismatic. He can't campaign. He can't give a speech to show up to, raise money for him and to actually get people to show up to a bunch of these, campaign stops to be able to get the crowd. And he never liked to even go on after me and Don, quite frankly. So it's very frustrating. And people have to understand that history, Roger, that you laid out, because people say, oh, why is Trump being mean, in the beginning? But they're beginning to see that the emperor had no clothes. But at first they thought, well, Trump's being a bully, he's being mean. Why is he attacking DeSantis? Why don't they make him VP? I'm like, because you can't, but that's never happening. But all DeSantis has done is just this downward spiral, which really, I think, is putting his 2028 chances down the drain, because 2024 is over for him.
Yeah, I think he's very, very badly damaging the brand. Here's the fundamental problem. There's a necessary likability factor in politics. People like Donald Trump. Why? Because Donald Trump likes people. He gets straight from people. Donald Trump is the regular guy. He's the kind of guy you can sit down and have a cheeseburger with. If you gave Donald Trump a choice,
a cheeseburger or two,
dinner with a bunch of cab drivers or dinner with a bunch of Fortune 500 CEOs, he'd rather sit with the regular people.
Yeah, he gets strength from it. You're right.
He's eminently likable. Ron is clearly adverse to mixing with people. He's socially extraordinarily awkward. But the other thing people like about Donald Trump is that he cannot be bought and he cannot be bossed. So we read in today's New York Times that in order to please one of his major donors, he's now taking the position that there was no fraud in the 2020 election. We've seen this before. When he appeared to mildly criticize our shipping billions of dollars to Ukraine to edge this country into World War III, he quickly retreated when a couple of his donors were unhappy. And then he's trying to have it both ways on China. He's against the tariffs that Donald Trump used to bludgeon China into paying us billions of dollars instead of stealing our technology and cheating. So I honestly don't think that this is going to end well for him. There's another key point of this, and that is budgeting and long-range planning financially is absolutely crucial in a presidential campaign.
Yes.
Ron's biggest problem is he's raised a lot of money, His other biggest problem is he spent a
Right.
huge amount of money to get precisely nowhere. But he has been sustained by a very small number of very wealthy, maxed out donors and bundlers.
Where do
He
you go
has
from
he
here
has
then? You see the problem?
28 donors in the whole state of New Hampshire. I swear to you. Donald Trump, on the other hand, his campaign is fueled by hundreds of thousands of small and medium dollar donations of people who love Trump and who will give again and again and again. In fact, every time they indict him, these people send another check. Every time they indict him, his numbers in the polls go up, not down. It's counterintuitive. But people see through this entire fraud. So let me get this straight. Questioning the outcome of an election based on irregularities and anomalies is an egregious crime for which you should go to prison unless you're Kamala Harris or Nancy Pelosi or the late John Lewis or Amy Klobuchar or Stacey Abrams or Chuck Schumer or Jamie Raskin, in which case it's perfectly all right. Because
Exactly.
they challenged the 2016 election. 100 Democrat members of Congress voted against certifying the Electoral College vote in that election. They insisted that they had been robbed in Georgia in 2018. So in other words, questioning election is okay for them, but when Donald Trump does it, it's a crime. This is really an absurdity. Does anyone think
It's true. Double standard.
Donald Trump was not leading by heavy double digits in the Republican contest and leading Joe Biden nationwide and in every swing state, that they would be using the full force and power of the Justice Department to come after him? I mean, who locks up their political opponents and tries to have them incarcerated? I mean, Joseph Stalin,
Yes.
Adolf Hitler, Mao Zedong, Fidel Castro, and now sadly, Joe Biden.
It's unbelievable, and meanwhile, Donald Trump, despite all of this, and this evil descending and trying to destroy him, he's dominated. Even as he fights these multi-front, legal attacks, we're waiting on Georgia now. What more can you tell us about the corruption that we're seeing playing out? And by the way, let's talk a little bit about this judge in the D.C. January 6th case. Wow.
Well, the judge in question is a major donor to Obama, both she and her husband, and her mother-in-law. She and her husband are both federal judges. They both got their judgeships after donating heavily and fundraising for Barack Obama. She previously worked in the same law firm as Hunter Biden. She's ruled against President Trump, trying to keep the Fusion GPS documents that prove that there was no Russian collusion and that the Steele dossier was a fraud. She ruled against those being allowed to be made public. Mm-hmm. I mean, she's clearly very hostile to Trump. The protective order, let me explain this to people. Protective order means gag. That's what it means. They did this to me in D.C. They don't want you to be able to defend yourself publicly while MSNBC and CNN and NBC and ABC and the New York Times and the Washington Post dump a load of crap on you every day, attack you of criminality every day. But God forbid that you might actually be allowed to defend yourself in any public forum. It is outrageous. Nowhere, you're a lawyer, you're a very good lawyer. Where does it say that when you're charged with a crime, even falsely charged, that you lose your First Amendment right to free speech? It doesn't.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's as if we're discussing something happening in another country. So now this man, they're trying to gag him, just like you said. It's like a gag order. There's nothing protective about it. It's actually destructive because they want to prevent him from telling the truth about how they weaponize the justice system, how they're using it as lawfare to go against him, to try to prevent him from retaking the White House in 2024. This is how outrageous it is. Meanwhile, the people doing this are the ones that should be, locked up and belong in jail. I want to ask you too. Go ahead, Roger.
I think that's a very key point. If you look at every action against Trump, it is immediately preceded by some major revelation about the Bidens. We find out that Joe and Hunter each got $5 million wires from Ukraine in connection with Burisma, and Joe used his influence to pressure the president of Ukraine to fire a prosecutor investigating Burisma and his son. Boom, the next day, there's superseding charges against Donald Trump. Ukraine is found, cocaine is found in the White House. Boom, new charges against Donald Trump. This is so obvious that a child can see it. It's a strategy of distraction. Let's be very clear of what House Republicans have discovered. Absolute proof of extortion, bribery, money laundering, influence peddling, illegal lobbying, and multi-million-dollar wires to members of the Biden family from Russia, China, Ukraine, Romania. I mean, when Nancy Pelosi says this is a waste of time, there's nothing to investigate, that tells you everything you need to know. It is a strategy of distraction.
It really is a strategy of distraction. That's exactly it. But, it's backfiring on them, thanks be to God, because you see the momentum that President Trump has. So I'm always afraid to ask certain questions that the other side might be listening to that's going to help them if they get Stone's advice, okay? So what are Stone's rules for the Trump campaign? We want to help them moving forward. And then what's sort of your message to the rest of these, candidates that are just flailing, in the wind?
Look, the other Republican candidates, some of them are auditioning for vice president, and that's fine. That's a tradition. Some of them, like Vivek Ramaswamy, have been smart enough not to attack Donald Trump. When Ron DeSantis says he doesn't believe the election was stolen, well, that flies in the face of 70% of Republicans who think otherwise. By the way, there's another 15% who aren't sure. So this is Harry Carey. This is suicidal. Mm-hmm. This is Donald Trump's party at the grassroots. This is now the party of working families. This is the party of putting America first. And any candidate for president who wants to challenge that is headed on a one-way street to political oblivion. Now, if you're running for just the exercise, and now that I think of it, Chris Christie could use a little exercise. But if you're running for just the exercise, I mean, I said Chris Christie should run, not for president. I just think he should run. But
it's so brittle.
The point here is, let's take Tim Scott, the senator from South Carolina. He's run a very constructive, positive campaign. He not once has attacked or criticized President Trump. Smart. I think he's got a great political future. Shows he's pretty smart. This is Trump's party. He's going to be the nominee. I don't see how this D.C. trial, which was really laid on because they're desperately afraid the president will get acquitted in a fair trial in Florida. And they also know the Presidential Records Act of 1977 indicates that he, as president, can do anything whatsoever with his records, including deciding which ones are personal and which ones have to be returned to the archive. Mm-hmm. And the judge who upheld that, Judge Amy Berman Jackson, was the judge in my case. On a down note, while I see that the president's lawyers are going to move to recuse this judge, the person who makes that decision is the judge herself. I think that's highly unlikely that she will agree to be recused. And as for a change of venue, again, the judge will decide whether or not a change of venue is merited. In my case, I asked for a recusal of a judge. It was denied. I asked for a move of venue outside of D.C. where I had a completely hostile jury. It was denied. D.C. is a killing field. That is why they're so intent in charging Donald Trump with a fabricated crime there, so they can try to damage his campaign for president.
1,000%. They love that venue to be able to do that. It is a strategy of destruction. It's unbelievable. But he's pushing through, and I expect we're going to hear from Georgia on that indictment, Fulton County, anytime soon. Agree?
Yeah, and I'm going to be honest with you. I've read that entire transcript, and I've listened twice to the audio of the phone call. By the way, it's tedious. But the president very specifically does not tell the Secretary of State, go out and get 11,870 votes. Find me those votes. It's not what he says. What he says is, you have already inadvertently counted 11,870 illegal votes. And he breaks it down, 520,000, 5,200 of them were convicted felons. Roughly 1,200 were people that were certified to be deceased, and so on. So once you threw those illegal votes out, Trump would have carried the state. But that's not the same as go out and say, oh, go out and manufacture these votes. Just go find them. That's not what he said. This is the most outrageous indictment of them all. Fannie Wills is a political hit woman. She's got ethical issues of her own, including a sexual relationship with a gang member she was supposed to be prosecuting. This is going to be thrown at him next. Let's be very clear. It's only going to make his poll numbers go higher. It's going to help pull hundreds more of small donations. And I think this is a very key point that needs to be made. Donald Trump is not supported by a handful of billionaire globalists writing enormous checks and asking their friends to write enormous checks. Donald Trump is funded by small and medium-sized donations, and right now he needs it more than ever. So if you haven't contributed, the time to contribute is now, and Kimberly can tell you where to go to do that.
Exactly. That's the thing. You got a couple things, right? You got the PAC, you got the campaign to go there, but, and obviously with these mounting legal bills as well. But again, it's just a distraction to try to throw Trump off, throw the supporters off, suppress his support, or people to say, oh, it's, fruitless to support President Trump. Well, that's all incorrect. He is strong. He is not going to drop out, as you know, Roger. This is no, he is 1,000% going to stay in no matter how many indictments, whether there's 2 more, 5 more, 100 more, it just does not matter. He's going to proceed forward, and he really is just gaining strength and momentum, and he's doing very well. I know you talked to him. I talked to him. So he's in the right frame of mind, and he is, I think it's pretty funny. He said, you come after me, I'm coming after you.
Yeah, it's amazing how resilient, how determined, how upbeat, how optimistic he is. This is the toughest man I've ever known. Look, I worked for Richard Nixon. He was a very tough guy. I worked for Senator Bob Dole. He was also a very tough guy. But there is no one tougher than Donald Trump, particularly when it comes to standing up for America. He could have the greatest life in the world right now if he wanted. He could be out playing golf. He could be playing with his grandchildren. He could be living the ultimate life of luxury. He chooses to do this, not because he needs it, but he's doing it for us. I think that is an absolute key point. He's doing it.
And it's giving him strength, because he's doing it for the people. And he's always been about that. When he first started campaigning, talking about the forgotten men and women that have been left behind in this country, quite frankly, by both sides. That's why I'm happy to root out the rhinos and the despicable uniparty and globalists and swamp people, because they're on both sides. But we see you, okay? Like, we see them. We know who it is. And a day of reckoning is coming, I'll tell you that much. But Roger, I got to let you go do your fabulous show, The Stone Zone. All right, so you can get more wisdom from the one and only, the most iconic political strategist out there. Thank you so much, my friend, for being on the program.
Thanks, Kim. God bless you.
All right, God bless. And my closing remarks just ahead. But first, I want to thank another amazing sponsor. So be sure to check out Patriot Mobile. With Patriot Mobile, you put America first with every call, all while getting the same nationwide coverage as major carriers. Patriot Mobile provides you dependable wireless service at an affordable price, putting your dollars into action and supporting freedom-loving values. They donate a portion of every dollar to support groups that fight for the First Amendment, the right to bear arms, the sanctity of life, and protecting our brave police and first responders. Patriot Mobile, mobilizing freedom and supporting you. For free activation, please go to patriotmobile.com/KG. That's patriotmobile.com/KG. Get it for free. So, in closing tonight, do not let the swamp exhaust you into obedience, because that's exactly what they want. You see what they're so scared of. The more Donald Trump is attacked, the stronger he gets. MAGA momentum, it's real, and it is building. And the deep state schemes are backfiring one after the next. So like I always say, it's time to stay in the fight, because it's when you're over the target that the calls to silence you grow the loudest. So be sure to like, please, and subscribe to my channel at Kimberly Guilfoyle. Turn on notifications, download the Rumble app, and tell all your friends so they know exactly where to find us. And do the same for Don Jr. And be sure to follow us, please, across all platforms, Twitter or X marks the spot, whatever the heck, which is now called X, Truth Social, Facebook, and Instagram. And don't miss Don Jr.'s big show tonight. It's going to be huge at 6 p.m. Eastern with lawyer and Article 3 project founder Mike Davis. You don't want to miss it. And please hop over to Locals for a live Q&A with yours truly. Have a wonderful evening, and I'll see you